Spoilers, 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 spoilers. And if you're one of my players, go away. Do not watch this episode. Because if you do, well, you're just going to make it sucky for yourself. And if you want to play in this campaign, watch the video at your peril. It contains spoilers. I hold nothing back. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of How to Be a Great GM. My name is Guy, and today I am going to be taking you through what I'm planning on doing for Dragonlance Shadow of the Dragon Queen in terms of my game that I'll be running for my players. Now, I think the important thing to bear in mind is this is not a session 0. I will have done that already, where it's just sort of character exploration and all that kind of stuff. This is how do I introduce my players into the campaign, and how do I give them some character knowledge that they already possess as meta game knowledge. Because Wizards of the Coast is really good at promoting their products and the content that is within the product. So I've got to compensate for that. So this is me designing that and unpacking that. Now, if you want to look at my plan for the entire campaign and what I needed to do with regards to the book, that's last week's episode. So go check that out first before we move on. Okay, so where do we start? Well, we always start with constraints. What are our constraints? The fundamentals that our players need to know about the world setting, really, or the history, or the thing, right, is that Takhisis has been defeated before and was kicked off of the planet somewhere by some heroes way back when. Then a mad priest tried to become a god, and the gods didn't like this, so they dropped a mountain onto him, quite literally dropping a mountain onto him. And that caused the big cataclysm, which was about 350 years ago. And as a result, since the cataclysm, there are no gods, there's no dragons, life is slowly putting itself back together again. There's ancient technology from before the cataclysm, but it's all been forgotten and buried and lost and that sort of thing. And that's it. That's it in a nutshell. Really, it's as simple as that. How am I going to incorporate this into my game? Well, the locations that the players are going to be running their adventures in, that they're going to be exploring. I really need to have the old ruins, the toppled statues, the bits and the pieces. The book is really good at doing this, by the way. There are even tables within the book which are like, as they're exploring an ancient city, randomly roll, and one of the options is a pair of feet, an old statue, but nothing else. And the feet are just mundane feet, right? Which kind of brings me back to thinking about how we see ancient Rome here on Earth. So I'm going to want to do that. Now, I need to incorporate that then into the storytelling. So into my vocabulary, I need to remember to do this. The book reminds me, so great. But also the maps. If I do make any maps, those maps I think would really benefit from having an ancient face half emerging out of the sand, all this kind of stuff, because it is established that the earlier period had more advanced technology. What this also does is it gives us our theme. We know the theme of the book from last week. The theme is hubris or arrogance or self-importance, I suppose. But hubris really is the right word. So we've got that as a theme. Yes, so the theme is it's everywhere in the book. It's lovely. It's very, very straightforward, which makes it easier for us to imprint it into our adventures and into our stories. Right, so the opposite of hubris is humility, and that's presented in the book in the form of the Knights of Solamnia. So the knights need to be very humble in this age, but knights from the previous age need to have a certain arrogance about them, a certain, well, we're saving the world, what are you doing, you little thing, you. Now, they're not the only faction in the world of Ansalon, or the continent of Ansalon. There are also the 3 mages, 3 mage orders within the mages of high sorcery. High sorcery. I do like that. They had to change it from wizards of high sorcery to mages because there's so many arcane users these days. Mages of high sorcery, they're present in the book, but I wouldn't say that they're a feature in the book, certainly not on the scale of the Knights of Solamnia. Now, something else that is problematic, or no, problematic is the wrong word, let's say irksome to me is the fact that the player characters get involved in the entire campaign basically because they helped to run away. And I find that a little bit, I understand that player characters are meant to be the hero characters. Yeah, I get that. But the fact that they arrive in Adventure 2 at Kalaman and are basically gone, okay, well, you're special. We're going to place our fate in your hands. We need to address that too. It's also clear that the player characters are not supposed to know about the dragon invasion that's currently taking place in Ansalon. There's been so much promotion about Takesis, the Dragon Queen, and the invasion, and the stories of Dragonlance. And apart from the marketing, there's decades of books that people have read, and that's become part of the common lore and all that kind of stuff. So we need to address it. It's one of our constraints. That's what we're addressing constraints here. We also have to look at how does the book get the characters into the story. And as it stands, there are 3 prelude mini adventures that can happen. One is for the martial classes, defeat some draconians, which admittedly, it does at least make the player characters aware of draconians to help that meta knowledge that the players are going to go in with, but it doesn't do very much else than that. There is a magic pre-trial trial for magic users where they kind of have to face the test, but it's not the actual test. It doesn't really advance anything anywhere. And then there's a dream sequence where the divine characters realize that the gods are not actually gone and that they might be around. I don't feel like any of them are contributing significantly. I think there's a better way of doing it that is going to solve a lot more of our constraints than what the book presents us with. And then finally, the players, the MacGuffin, the whole big thing is that the player characters are supposed to be converging on this little town for the death of a very valued friend, when they just have to make up why this friend is valued, of Ispin Greenshield. Ah, yes, Ispin Greenshield, adventurer, trader, and teacher. Human who is known by the name of Greenshield because of the green shield that he carries, which I might adapt because my players are all playing mages. Shield is not really going to be useful for them. At the same time, his name is Greenshield because he carries a green shield, so it might... we'll have to figure out something, maybe a charm of protection +1 or something. So we'll have to incorporate that. But he has 2 friends, Becklin and Cudgel. Again, this is something that the player characters should know about, since Becklin features quite heavily in the upcoming adventure. And so that's that. Anything else about him? Oh yes, he retired to the village of Vogler, where our actual adventure number 1, starts. So, quite a bit for them to know. So because Ispin is so integral, and because last week when we were looking at the bigger story, we realized that Ispin's green shield could become valuable to us as building a story, I think it becomes really important for us to then invest in Ispin and to invest the characters in Ispin beforehand. So we've got to turn Ispin from being just this adventurer, teacher, retiree, and corpse. Ispin needs to become more. Ooh, what if Ispin was actually one of the gods from before the, cataclysm thingy, and he saves the PCs from a no-win situation. He just swoops in. Yeah, I am Ispin Greenshield. I don't know why I went with that accent. No, we'll have to think about that one for him as well. Thoughts? There's one constraint that I didn't mention, and which you probably won't have, but which I have, is that for my first 4 sessions with 4 different players, well, with 4 players, I should say, they're all playing a one-on-one to begin with due to scheduling conflicts, that great nemesis of role-playing, scheduling, right? So I have 4 one-on-one sessions. So does that idea give us what we need? I've got it. What if the players start in a prison? And I do really like the idea of putting them all in this common struggle kind of situation where each one of them will have struggled to get to the village, or will have struggled with Ispin. So we're taking Ispin, we're going to use Ispin. I also like the idea of them actually having their mage trial now and graduating. And the reason for that is one of the constraints is, or one of the concerns, remember, was that the player characters are just given authority. They're just trusted as being valued members of the community. If they've actually graduated from the mages of high sorcery, if they're part of that and they've got their robes of red and white and black and whatever colors they're going to be wearing, that gives them at least a little bit of perceived authority, which will allow them to translate into a leadership position, I think, a lot easier. It means that Ispin can run those trials, perhaps. If Ispin is running the trials for each of our potential mages, that gives us a chance for the player characters to learn more about Ispin. Now, if we can somehow wangle Becklin and Cudgel into that, our player characters are getting all of the information they could possibly need. They're building up a rapport. They're learning. They're becoming mages of high society, which ticks a whole bunch of other boxes. It does say that each trial, though, should be unique. There is a trial that's in the book, but it only happens much, much later. Could we just use that, do you think? Well, we can use what's in the book. The challenge is that the book assumes that you're going to have a mixture of martial and arcane and divine players all running together. So the way that the trial is set up in Adventure 4 is, I like the advice that they give to you in the book, and we'll look at that when we get to Adventure 4, but it's pretty much it's a moral decision dilemma. Right, but we want to test for what? Intelligence, spellcasting, obviously, humility. Since the theme is hubris, we need to make sure that the player characters have some kind of humility, or at least learn a lesson if they don't have humility. Exactly. So I think our approach is better. Each of the PCs finds themselves in a predicament, and Ispin and Ispin's allies, so he's got two, Becklin and Cudgel. If they are all involved, so much better, because Becklin is a guide to the player characters in Adventure 1, and so if there is some kind of history there, that's really good. Okay, right, so let's think of the scenarios. 4 players, well, 4 adventure types, right? Thwarting, delivering, discovering, and collecting. It makes absolute sense. So now we just need to give each one of them a different adventure, which is a social and an encounter. It couldn't be simpler. So cage and lava. Let's go with the prison. Let's go with the prison. Let's go with the prison. Why not? Let's go with the prison. This would be a delivering adventure. They have to deliver themselves out of the cage and get away. Okay, we could do that. Another one is hunting a strange beast in a forest. So it's a discovery adventure, right? The third one could be a collecting adventure, and let's draw that from the book. In the book, one of the encounters, possible prelude adventure thingies, is a convoy of knights. Well, where was that convoy going? Well, what if the PC is going with the convoy to collect an ancient relic? And then the fourth one would have to be thwarting, which would be... Ooh, I've got it. They face against a dragon, a nice big red dragon. It's a no-win situation. They have to sacrifice themselves in order to, save the population, and maybe the dragon could tempt them to the dark side, the Red Scale. There's no organization called the Red Scale, but there might be now. Does that cover all of our constraints? I think it does. Although not for each player character, but in general. So as a group, they've got the meta-knowledge sorted out, they've got some ideas, they've got some hints, but they are now at least all unified in their graduation to a large degree. They know about Ispin. I'm going to use Becklin as the example of humility. They're going to be a nice Solemnic knight. Cudgel can be full of hubris, arrogance, kind of testing the PCs. Oh, you're never going to be able to do that. Complete failure. Look at you. You're washed up, finished. I think that's pretty good. I think that covers it. Right, now, to play the game. I hope this has been insightful to you. This is my method, this is my approach. Next week, we move on to looking at motives for encounters, which is something that I certainly will be looking at. Not really for these 4 that we've planned, because the motive is for the mages of high sorcery to test the player characters, so the creatures within these encounters have no motive whatsoever. They are suffering from... well, they just have no will of their own, no free will at all. And before I go, I am curious, though, would you run it like this, or would you run it as written, where the player characters basically have to come up with a creative narrative as to how they knew Ispin Greenshield? Is this overthinking it? I personally don't think so, but what do you think? Leave those comments so that we can all share. And until next week, I wish you and yours the very happiest of gaming.